Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Workflows and Espressos. I'm Meaghan Moylan. I'm so excited because I have two people in the industry who are very important, but mostly I have two friends on the show today, my third and fourth guests ever. And can you hear my dryer? It's fully
I think
synced.
it's done.
Okay. It's done. It takes a while. I'm very excited to have both of you on the show today and really learn from your stories and hear more about you and advice that you have for aspiring founders and your journey as both founders in tech, and mostly fun and exciting stories of what it's like to be a founder and things that you've gone through. And so take it away, Andrew. Tell me who you are. Tell us who you are, the listeners.
Sure. Okay. Very excited to be here. Hopefully my dryer doesn't go off too. So I think I'm excited today for the conversation because we're going to talk about entrepreneurship as much about maybe short-term rentals, vacation rentals, etc. So I'll just share my background in that is I biked down to San Francisco 17 years ago from Seattle, not knowing anything about starting businesses, and moved into a home with four other folks, one of whom was building a startup. It's like, what's that? What the heck? And that led me down a path where I thought I was initially going to be in San Francisco for about 6 months. And now I've been here 17 years, learning hopefully how to build businesses, and fell deeply in love with that kind of entrepreneurship journey. So today I think we're going to share some of the roller coaster that is that decision and that lifestyle, and hopefully create some value for folks who are building their own business today. So
what's your company? What have
my
you
company,
built?
one of them is Wheelhouse.
One of
Um,
Yeah, you've been a
I
part of
go,
a few, just a small, lesser known,
yeah.
Um,
I mean, why build one business when you can try to build a couple? It's really hard. You learn a lot as you go. So I'll try to bring that perspective of like what we got wrong every other time,
yeah.
and maybe what we'll hopefully get right this time. But there's more. I have a lovely wife and a daughter on the way and all that kind of fun stuff. But we'll
What?
cover that more later.
Okay. First five
Yeah.
minutes, first 2 minutes and 30 seconds. John, do you have something crazy to follow that up with?
No, well, no daughter, but we have Waffles, the Australian Labradoodle, who's a big fixture at the Sukhia house. I would say for me, like similar to Andrew, I also found startups in San Francisco. I was based in SF, and the company I was with before, I was at a company called Hotel Tonight, which was acquired by Airbnb, and then was at Airbnb for almost 2 years. And I also kind of similarly got the bug while I was at Airbnb, and I was there kind of just through this really crazy period where they were pre-IPO, but seriously post, product market fit. So a couple years before, or just right up until the point they IPO'd is when I left. And I just had the bug. I wanted to start something. I was so, I don't often say this like sarcastic. I was pretty inspired being there. Like, you just felt like there was something crazy here, and I wanted to kind of try my hand at something like that. And I'll say one other thing was I had a neighbor who became a buddy during COVID. He and his wife lived literally next door to me at my apartment on Sacramento, right off Lafayette Park. And his name was Adam, and Adam had started this company called The Athletic, which has now since been acquired by New York Times, really successful founder. But I knew him as Adam, the neighbor, and we got to become friends during COVID. And we're kind of like COVID buddies because we would all hang out together, he and his wife and me and my wife, and have drinks on Friday, have dinner. And we really didn't have a lot of other people we were talking to. And so he had started this company and raised a bunch of money and, gone into Y Combinator and all this. And we were just talking. I was talking a lot about ideas I had, and Adam really gave me a lot of confidence just from the very kind of casual chats we had about like starting something. He was like, I think you should do that. And so he encouraged me a lot in the same manner that other people, at Airbnb were my old managers and stuff. So it was a really interesting cross section of people, but very much like a proponent of being in a place like that, because it really does like give you a perspective that I think so few have, especially if you're not in that world or not like around that like group of people. So yeah, that was kind of my entryway. And my company is called Top Key. So we are a corporate card expense management and a AP platform designed for vacation rental managers. So and we're currently headquartered where I'm based here in Nashville, Tennessee. So that's where we're full time now, but just because I know that was your next question.
It was. So I think it takes so much confidence to start a company, right? Especially if you've already been in a job where you're getting a paycheck and you have health insurance and you feel like this corporate umbrella safety, so to speak. Did you experience like a lot of anxiety when you made the jump from I have a steady paycheck to I'm going to go out and do this thing on my own and like all if it doesn't work it's all on me. Like how did Andrew talk to me about that?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I would say I did not have a lot of confidence coming into starting companies for sure. I had a huge amount of anxiety. I had a huge amount of imposter syndrome, and I probably carried that for roughly 10 years on my entrepreneurial journey until maybe about 5 years ago. I couldn't call myself a CEO when we started Wheelhouse, as an example. So I don't know that it was confidence, Meaghan. I would say there's conviction of like, oh, this thing should exist. It's really cool. I think I can get a group of people together who can build it. And I have no idea if like I'm seeing the world in a totally crazy way that's not going to work. But I would say conviction for me was a much bigger driver than confidence. And like,
Okay.
I deeply believed, and I still believe this today, that what we see in the short-term rental space, that the narrative was wrong. That this wasn't a fad, it was the future. And if that was true, I thought you'd have to have certain things built. And I still like deeply believe it today, but conviction pulled me forward. Confidence came later.
Did you have a moment where you were like, I'm going to just bet on myself? Or was it like months and months and months or years leading up to like, I have this idea and I want to do it, but I'm kind of afraid. And then finally you did it? Or was it like you had this idea and a couple months later you were like, I'm just quitting?
Oh man. So I had, one of the great reasons to work in Silicon Valley is you do meet all these folks. I had worked at another startup, a 6-person startup we were acquired, and the CEO of that actually brought me in to run Beyond.
Okay.
And that was about 10 years ago. And I've been running my own thing before that, but I'd never run anything in the short-term rental space. And he knew that I loved Airbnb and he knew that I liked operating. So he brought me in, and I was actually a paid CEO from day one of a company that had a little bit of cash in the bank. And, but Meaghan, I think maybe the confidence kind of grows, like you're learning in industry when you're often as a startup, like, you know, as a new CEO, it's not like if you're doing something new, no one's really done it before, right? So you're kind of making it up. You're usually trying to change a slightly antiquated industry. You're getting up on stage and saying your point, which many people might disagree with. Your first customers are going to have a really bad product in their hands that you have to convince them to pay you for. Your first employees need to leave often more stable situations to quit and come join you. Those are all like, I remember having huge amounts of self-doubt around like, why would this person A, quit their job, and then B, show up every single day to help us build this thing? So I would say like, in some ways, I don't think you should wait for confidence to arrive to build. I think you should focus on conviction and something you're excited about, and trust that a lot of the confidence will come from making mistakes and just continuing to go.
Do you resonate with that, John?
I mean, 1000%. I think that I kind of similarly didn't have, and I still certainly would not say I don't know. I think that what happens is it just like so many things in life that, you know, you kind of break things into these component parts, and then you start to be able to like achieve them, and you get confidence along the way. And so there's things that I'm very confident about now that I would have been like scoffing and laughing in your face if you told me 4 years ago I would be confident about, like raising money, or like building. I mean, but I'll start at the beginning. It was like incorporating a company. Like, how do you do that? Like, what is the process? Like, I spent like a whole like weekend kind of like going through all of these documents and like thinking I screwed up something. And I remember like it being just this kind of like very stressful thing for this very little thing. Now it's like, I could do that in my sleep now, because once I learned how to do it, I've had to do it again in different states. It's not a big deal. So you're constantly kind of finding these plateaus, and then you're going, okay, now I'm at another plateau. And certainly like, you know, not making false praise, like Andrew's way ahead of like where I am, but Andrew, you've probably experienced these things along the way of like hitting your first million of revenue, hitting 10 million. There's all these stages, and you talk to and hear founders, and I'm on a couple of CEO threads from the investors we're backed by. And it's like, I mean, there are people who are literal billionaires on these threads talking, and you see they're still working through stuff. And it's like, they're not like sort of in a kind of a state of having achieved something and they're done and they're kind of on the beach smoking the cigar, drinking the scotch. Like they're still grinding, trying to figure out how to get better and better. And I don't think I kind of fully understood that mindset. And so you start to get a little success and you're like, wow, I totally see like how people could do a bunch of great things and still want to do much, much more and like still not really be satisfied. And so there's a balance there too. You have to be thoughtful about like, you can live your whole life that way and you see that. But I think still it's kind of like a better mindset to be in than just like, okay, I'm either like super confident, rash, and like cocky, or I'm like, I can nap do anything. I'm never going to leave the cocoon of my role or job or whatever. Like both are not great like states to be operating in to like achieve something. I don't know,
Yeah. It's so like imposter syndrome is so odd. I remember leaving 360 and thinking to myself, like, I'm 27, 28. The only people that have ever taken me seriously is like Jason and Ashley. And no one's ever going to give a 28-year-old that doesn't have their MBA like this type of role that I have now at this company that is worth millions of dollars. And that's just not true. Right. And I remember a lot of people like leaving 360 and going to work for Key Data and like thinking to myself, maybe I could go in that pipeline because I already have this like confidence and I already know Jason really well. But I like wanted to prove to myself that I could hold a leadership position at a different company. And it's very different than like founding a tech startup. Obviously, you guys are really cool, but it like cured me of that imposter syndrome to a certain degree, but I still have a lot of it, like every time I'm in a conversation with someone, with another like person who runs a company, I'm always thinking to myself, like, they've been doing this for so much longer or what, and that like overcoming that is this constant journey, I think.
I think something I've thought about a lot, and I've kind of learned this just going through my career, is most people aren't thinking about you. Most people are thinking about themselves. And you think, what? I know it's hard to like, but it's so easy to get into that mindset of like, oh my gosh, everyone's staring at me. And it's a bit of a narcissism that we all have, like that we're somehow bigger than more important. And so back to the whole, like, whatever you want to call it, if it's stoicism, you're not as unimportant and you're not as important as like everyone is thinking. And so don't like operate into that extreme. Focus on what you're doing, focus on your like output, focus on your work ethic, all these things. But like, don't get too hung up in what people think of you, because frankly, most of them aren't thinking of you. And you'll know this by how many times you met someone at a conference and they don't remember you or something. And then you realize like third or fifth time, you're like, not that person. They're in their own world. Like, and I'm sure I've done it to people. So I don't know. You kind of, it's a little bit of a release off of your shoulder when you're thinking about it. Cause like, it just doesn't matter. Like people aren't as much in you're not in their brain as much as you might think.
Mm-hmm. Did you have, or did both of you have this moment where maybe you like screwed something up, or you like approached this like, yeah, right. I know, obviously, but in the beginning,
John,
okay.
What are you talking about?
So you're starting Top Key, you're starting Wheelhouse. Like in the beginning, did you mess something up or reach this area of your like founder journey where you were like, this is going to be too hard? I like think that I like fucked up my whole life by doing this. Like, did this happen? Or do you remember the first time that it happened so bad that you regretted like what you were doing, and then coming back from that and being like, okay, it's actually not that big of a deal. Like, it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I have like a really like existential moment that like I could define here, but I mean, I did have, and I've had moments along the way where, we started Top Key, we went through Y Combinator, we ended up pivoting, and then my co-founder who I started the company with, my initial co-founder, he left. And, there was some moments where I was just me and I was kind of trying to decide whether I was going to continue building the company. I think that I was able to like navigate that gracefully, and he and I were able to like part ways gracefully. There was really no ill will or anything, but it was a bit of a, like, there was a lot of moments where I was like, man, I don't know. Like I kind of thought this was an idea. We were doing something totally different than what we're doing now. And it was like this long period for me, maybe 6 months of just kind of going into the weeds, meeting people, trying to like underwrite this entire idea with a different set of questions, a different set of processes that I was kind of thinking about. So there was a lot of nights then where I was like, man, I just don't know. But I did all throughout that. I had really supportive investors. I hadn't raised enough money that there was really this dread of like screwing up. It was like we just raised a very small amount of money, enough to pay myself, enough to give myself, a paycheck, but it was not enough to where I was feeling any sort of like deep distress if it didn't work. And that freed me up a lot to like go back to the drawing board, really kind of like look at this like a brand new business in a sense. So I was kind of joke, like I feel like I've started 2 companies, but it was both top key, but the first one no one ever really saw outside of a few managers and people I got to know. But that process was very, I had to be very like mindful of the fact that I was not in a place of like constancy. Now you're always not there for startups, but there was really it was like, I have no idea what's going to happen. And I was very comfortable with that. And I don't think I kind of would have wanted that initially when I left Airbnb. That was not my plan, but it was a really, really valuable time for myself. And I'm glad it happened. And it led to a lot of other great things, like meeting Brian, my co-founder, and who Andrew knows, like wouldn't have ever happened had the good stuff just continued to happen. And we just, anyway, so yeah, that's probably my answer that I would say was probably the most seminal part of like I don't know, maybe I messed up. I shouldn't have put my nice high paying job at Airbnb,
Yeah. Same type of
Nice.
thing, Andrew?
For me, yeah. So the 2 stories I have had before working in the short-term rental space. My first company was a publishing company. And I definitely remember staring at the ceiling at 4 a.m. thinking like, Andrew, you're an idiot. What have you done? Right. So I've had that personal doubt of like, you put so much time in, you're so trapped here. You're never going to make money. You're pretty effed. So I've had that. Wheelhouse is a really different type of emotional journey. So Wheelhouse spun out of Lyric, right?
Mhm.
Lyric was an operating company. When COVID hit, we had 25 buildings across the US, basically small hotels and apartment buildings, 150 full-time employees. Our occupancy in these buildings dropped to 6%. And we had to lay off 92% of the company in COVID and say, hey, there's no business here. And to the rest of us, call it 13 folks, I think, we said, hey, we're no longer an operating company. We're a technology company. If we put our heads down and build for the next 12 to 18 months, there's a small chance we can restructure the business and actually give you equity again. And if not, we're dead. Do you want to come along for this journey? Which is kind of thrilling actually and freeing at first. But then when we actually got to the point of having to restructure the business, I realized how insanely difficult it was. And the terrifying fear I had in that moment was, did everyone else know that this was going to be impossible? And I was the only idiot that led all these friends down this path. That's going to be a zero. Because it took us 9 months to restructure the business. We were basically bankrupt. If we didn't have really nice investors around the table, we would have definitely been dead. And I was going to have to tell all these people that we lost Lyric, and then he spent 18 more months building with me, and we now lost Wheelhouse. And that was going to be not necessarily personal embarrassment. There'd be some of that too, but just like that I had led friends wrong twice would have been really difficult to stomach. So I had many sleepless nights around that restructure. Am I naive? If I did know how hard it was, I would have recommended everyone quit. I really would have. But that naivete actually brought me that decision, and the team got through it. But yeah, that was pretty scary.
Andrew, why?
Yeah.
If I could ask a question, but why did you not just shut down and start a new company? Was there reasons structurally where you wanted to continue with that? Like hers is just new cap table, clean structure, new co.
We trusted. So if you go through bankruptcy, cap tables wiped out, you lose the rights to the IP, a competitor could buy it as an example. It's expensive, time consuming, etc. And when we looked at, without sharing too many details, all investors had to take a huge write down on the restructure, right? But even having percentage points of their original investment is better than a zero. So we looked at the economics of it. And we're like, hey, we trust the team can build out. We looked at the competitive landscape, thought we could win. We thought we had the team to build it, and we trusted our investors were going to, if we took care of them, that they were going to take care of us. And I have an incredible board member who basically made sure that happened, to the point where, like, if I didn't deeply trust that that relationship would be honored and the effort of the team would be honored, I wouldn't have done it. But we thought it was actually, even though it was going to be incredibly difficult, actually the likely better outcome to put Wheelhouse into a good position.
Hi, listeners. We are back again with another In Haven Insight this week. We have one of my great friends and just absolutely like a bombshell in the industry. Ashley, I'm so excited to have you here. What do you have for us today?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Ashley from In Haven. So my insight of this week for Meaghan and all of her audience is, did you know that 73% of U.S. hotels are associated with a national brand like a Marriott, Hilton, Choice, or Wyndham? 73% of U.S. supply.
I did not know that.
But did you know that, okay, so we've got 73% of hotels in the U.S. are associated with these national brands, but 85% of those hotels are run by local hospitality companies. So that Marriott in Boise, Idaho is probably managed by Boise Hospitality. So these local property management companies manage those hotels. And what's really interesting is that when you look at these local property managers that manage all of these hotels, notably 60% of them come from the AHOA Association, which is the Asian American Hotel Owners Association, primarily composed of South Asian Indian families who own and manage these hotels.
Wow. So what is In Haven doing to help create this standardization of this like association like experience in vacation rentals? How does this translate?
Yeah, so similarly, we work with these local property managers. So these are similar property management companies that manage all these hotels. And we work with our local property management companies to help them set their standards for their vacation rental. And what we do is we create custom branded landing pages for them on inhaven.com. So they have a branded page with all the items that have been approved to purchase. And we focus on the bed, bath, and kitchen, things that you can standardize across your diverse portfolio of homes. And so these landing pages are great tools to share with your homeowners that want to purchase products for their homes. And you can share, these are the standards that we've approved for all of our properties. And it's also a great communication tool for your internal teams. So they know that if a glass breaks, which glass they purchase for that replenishment, so that you have a consistent experience and you don't end up with mixed inventory, which looks really unprofessional in these homes.
Ashley, as a property manager that's located in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, I have previously been a part of the experience of having to drive 2 hours just to get new plates at Costco. And now customers, we can order this directly from our branded landing page, and it has made the largest difference. And I was previously concerned about this because it's really hard for us to get mail in Jackson, and it has never been an issue with In Haven. So I am so excited that other people now have the opportunity to work with you, and I recommend that everybody reach out to In Haven. So speaking of, how can we get in touch with you?
Definitely check us out at inhaven.com or reach out directly to me at ashley@inhaven.com. And I look forward to servicing all of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Thanks.
Like, okay, so leadership through this, right, is kind of what I'm thinking about. During COVID, there were times where we thought 360 was going to go under. And I will never forget, Ashley brought us all into a room, the whole company, and she said, we could lay everybody off and it would help us. But like, if the company's going to go bankrupt, like it's just going to go bankrupt, whether we lay people off or not. And so we're all on this ship together. And if it sinks, then like we're all going to go down. And she said that exact thing. And I just remember there wasn't a dry eye in the room and feeling anxiety because there was transparency around the fact that we were in like a bad way, but also this comfort in knowing that I worked for an employer that felt comfortable enough saying like, hey, we are in a bad way. And like, there's a chance that everybody could get laid off, and, we'll keep you posted, but hopefully that doesn't happen. How did you like operate through that? Were you very transparent with the whole team? Like, I have no idea what's going to happen and I am literally figuring it out day by day. Or were you like giving them weekly updates? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, I'll hop in because it sounds like tied to COVID, right?
Yeah.
So it was hard, right? Because we went down lockdown. We had this office where everyone was going into, and all of a sudden I had to lay off 92% of the company over Zoom, right? Not fun. I guess where we went to was, I think there was enough kind of credibility among built up in the company where like I had teammates saying like, you have to fire us. We know we can't survive. We know we can't make it. Back to that investor, the technically Lyric didn't have to pay our employees the full normal exit package. But our board basically said, we're going to give your employees as much money as we possibly can. And that's that. So from that moment, even though I was like, this is a terrible situation, how lucky are we that we have investors who don't even know you all, who are basically giving me permission to be the best boss I possibly can for you, and give you as like literally at some point it's illegal how much you can't just give infinite money away. It's the company's money, right? So I think my board put me in a position to be a good leader. And since then, to your transparency point, Meaghan, I don't think Lyric was a very transparent company. We were dealing with big numbers. It was scary. We were growing fast. We weren't doing as well as we needed to. And we were kind of not as confident as leaders, where we were not as fully transparent with the company as we should have been about the company's financials. And now every single person who is at Wheelhouse sees every number I see. Right. So like in some ways, the lesson coming from COVID is like, hey, you all deserve 1,000% transparent. If you're going to battle through this, your company will be fully transparent. So I would say that forced better leadership on me. But again, I had permission to be a good leader by a board that was like, we're taking care of your employees in a way that candidly very few boards in America probably did.
Yeah.
So I had support.
I love that you have like an open book company. John, you have a smaller team, of course, than Wheelhouse, like small but mighty. Love the Top Key team. All of like, especially Matthew. Don't want to like shout anybody out, but mostly Matthew.
And Trevor.
What is your dynamic like with the team? And Trevor, love Trevor. Brian.
Brian's okay.
Brian,
Yeah. The dynamic on the team is very different. I mean, we are really small. We have 10, maybe soon to be 11, and maybe soon to be 12 people. So, the small thing. But I think the thing that we are all trying to do is it's really, in some ways, it's easy or easier because it's just way more kind of real-time data flowing in via Slack and Basecamp and a few text chains. And it's pretty much everyone knows kind of what's going on. And so that's good and bad because you end up getting a bunch of information. Everyone's kind of getting everything in real time. So I think it allows you the freedom to kind of not get too too structured. I don't feel like I'm having to spend a ton of time creating slides internally for stuff. But I do think you get into the situation of sometimes it can be a little distracting internally early stage, especially when people start to have their own functions. And so Matthew and I have been working to figure out ways to Trevor and I have been trying to figure out, hey, we have certain sales updates we want to share. We have certain CS updates we want to share. And then there's things that we should just kind of, let's not distract each other if that person can't be roped in to help with something. So, I don't know if that's scalable past 20, 30 people, but I do think there's a lot of ways that we'll be able to kind of build on that, but trying not to over engineer at this point has been an area for me. Matthew, will send us updates in Slack after every call he does with a customer. And it's so helpful. He does all of them, and I think you'll hear this universally. People love working with him. And Brian and I can talk on the phone for 18 minutes and we're completely aligned on stuff. And so that really helps, having someone for me at least, that's got an engine and can kind of run through stuff mentally and be okay, I get it. I understand what we need to do. I understand. And so I think lots of things that I'm trying to get better at in terms of my own leadership ability and how you work with some person is different, how you work with someone else. Some people need a lot more context. Others don't need hardly any. That's an area I struggle with. I'm sure you guys have thoughts on that, but just being more of a bespoke communicator is something I'm really curious how people do, because I feel a lot of times I'm not great at that across the board, and that can sometimes create tension and stuff that maybe it's coming from my own poor communication styles. So, yeah, I don't know, but again, not perfect in this front, but trying to get better and kind of like do it one-to-one as much as I can.
Mm-hmm. You're definitely, we talked about this in the episode with Will and Riley, like, are you a Will or a Meaghan? Where I have struggled with leadership previously because I really care about being liked. This is probably shocking to everybody. And when I was first put into a leadership role, I was like 22 and had no experience ever, and everyone was like twice my age and didn't take me seriously. But I only cared about like being a cool boss that people like wanted to hang out with and be around, and I learned like a lot of really hard lessons. And now I feel like I found a really good balance, but only because I've been forced into having really hard conversations and, firing people and reprimanding people and making decisions where I gave context when I shouldn't have, and, otherwise. But I still find myself like the true self is when I meet with somebody, I want to like talk and like get to know you for a little bit and like talk about the weather and what you did over the weekend, and then I want to like get down to it. And John, I already know that you're like, let's just get to the meat and potatoes. Andrew, do you like fall on one side or the other?
I love that. But I appreciate that, finding that balance too, because I wanted to be liked and I want to be the cool boss and friends with folks. And I that's a great question. I would say when I think about one-on-one meetings with teammates or development meetings, I want to have both like that. Are you heading in the right direction and why? And then the brass tacks.
Yeah.
So that would be maybe my form of like talk about the weather or whatever. Is like, hey, how are things going? Like truly, honestly, are you having fun? Why are you having fun? Etc. But I don't know. That's a really, I guess this delves into the what type of leader are you? I would say in person, I'm much more likely to do small talk, and on video calls, I'm more like, hey, 1 minute into a meeting, 2 minutes in, like, let's get going. Cause I don't know if you're loving this. So that's maybe my vibes changed a little bit, since COVID, since we're fully remote and all video,
Yeah.
but, yeah, I definitely, I want to be friends with the people I work with 100%, and my customers and my partners.
Mhm.
Because it's better and it's more fun and it's more interesting when you are.
Yeah.
And I would say at 28 folks full-time here, like I still aim to have a at least personal relationship with everyone, and if not like a pretty personal relationship with 50% plus of
Mhm.
the folks. But that's just more fun for me. So I want the company to be that.
Yeah. It's funny. I make fun of like the cultural index or the predictive index, like all the personality, the DISC assessment. What I've taken all of them, and like I've done it at all my jobs, but like there is a part of me that's like, can you really nail somebody down by like a test of 100 questions?
What do you
Which
think?
I think no, I don't know. But the one thing I will tell you that it has given me as a leader, because I still ask people to take it, which is like funny because I kind of think it's BS. I have gotten to know which employees like don't appreciate me like asking about the weather and like want me to get into business first. And like my friend is how I describe her, Chelsea. We went to middle school together, high school together. She worked with me at 360, now works with me at Outpost. And she is like direct. Like when we get on the phone, the last thing she wants me to do is be like, I online shopped last night. Like, can I show you the couple things that I bought? Because that's like my natural state.
Right.
And I know her so well now. And we've done these tests. We've probably taken 10 different tests over the course of the last 20 years that we've known each other. And she like doesn't want that. But at the end of the call, after we've talked about what we need to, she's happy to stay on for 5 minutes and talk about that. And that is, I think it has taught me like, do I think this test gave me everything I need to know about Chelsea? No, but I did learn enough to be able to communicate with her effectively. Do you have y'all's employees take these tests?
We use 4 steps, so we're fully on that train, and yeah, so one test to rule them all. I got a psychic that I contact before any hire, and look, it's yay or nay, and she's got the final thumbs up.
There's some truth to that. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear
I'm kidding,
that.
everybody. In case people ask.
Well, but do you? Is there some?
Don't take personality tests.
No, we do. We do. Actually, we've done every person. So seriously.
Shut up. You do.
Yeah. Brooke Fouts has been super helpful. for me on that front. And he's given me, I guess, the culture index. I can't say I'm fully like on board because I just don't understand it entirely, but it's been really helpful as a starting point. So I've given that to basically everyone on the team, and people who are interviewing that got pretty far along. The second thing I do, which maybe is a little bit of a kind of point in time, but when I was looking for my co-founder, I learned a lot through working with the first co-founder and just learned a lot about myself. So I put together a questionnaire. I was working with a coach at the time, and I was also working, with a couple of like early investors who had some thoughts on like, hey, how do you think about finding co-founders? And so I think it's First Round Capital or one of these like big VC funds has like a template of like a bunch of questions that you can like, it's kind of like a questionnaire you can ask someone. So I made it into a doc. And then as I was talking to all these different folks that I was considering bringing on as my counterpart, it was like after 4 or 5 calls, and me talk to people a lot before we commit affiliate business with them, I just said, hey, would you be willing to fill out this pretty in-depth document? And you can use it, but like it will help me understand better if I would work well with you, because I knew parts of myself and where it might like falter. Brian and I did that, and it was like incredibly helpful because when Brian sent me his, it was like, oh, this is the person I should be working with. Like it was like so helpful because I was reading it, and it's clearly he took time and wrote it. He called me, he's like, hey, that was a super helpful exercise. So we've had everyone that we've hired do it as well. I've changed it. Obviously, it's not every question is relevant for like a co-founder versus like, but it's like a lot of very intense questions. Like, how do you like to give feedback? Like, what is your process for work styles? Most people, we're kind of hybrid, remote, in person. So it's like, hey, what's your style for, writing? Like, how do you interface? Like, what times are you most available? A bunch of stuff that I still reference, like, by the way, with some of my early employees, like, hey, just checking, like, so-and-so likes this. Okay, I forgot. Like, he doesn't like to get, so that's been something that I've done. Again, not sure how like scalable it is, but certainly been something I really find valuable in because I've always learned a lot. I did have one person that was, that used ChatGPT to complete it and then told me they did. So that person didn't,
What?
they weren't, it was a person that didn't really work out. So, and I learned that. So that was kind of funny, but, and I knew it immediately. I don't think
Someone, to yourself.
It was like 3.5 too. Like, come on, use the,
at least use the paid version.
yeah, right. Like at least use the paid version. But yeah, that's pretty funny. But
I'm impressed. I'll have it. So we don't do that. Meaghan, I need to get your, so I love the questionnaires. And I actually think, so Wheelhouse is kind of funny because I built businesses with a lot of the team before. So like average tenure at Wheelhouse is like 4 years, right? We've just worked together for a really long time. Many of the teammates have traveled with internationally on bike trips and whatever. So I think we maybe underdo this part of it. I actually think it's really valuable. And on my own, I've done tons and tons of personal coaching. And the only thing that really still sticks with me, because I know I make decisions around it, is there's Brene Brown has a framework where it's like she lists 300 values on a page. And the exercise is pick your top 2. And the process of eliminating and shredding yourself down to the 2 most important values. What's so cool about it is like, you kind of know, like you'll know it's true when you're like, oh my God, that you can almost look at every single decision and think about how you felt.
Yeah.
And understand where there's like value tension. So like if I want equality and I also want like excellence, like, okay, where do those battle? So I wouldn't say the assessments I've ever found to be, I found them all to be fun. Yes, revealing. Yes, interesting. But the deep value exercise is the one where I'm like, wow, that actually impacts the most of my decisions and probably the exercise I should be doing with teammates.
what were your final 2?
It was learning. It was learning and fairness are my 2 most important values. And the way that comes out, like I'm a people pleaser too, right? So like it used to be hard for me to give feedback. I didn't want to like hurt someone, but I now think it's very fair and is very learning oriented to give you, be the person who gives you critical feedback. So it allows you to kind of find your way to navigate tough things Because if you're uncomfortable about it, it's usually this like something, it irked me that I wouldn't give great feedback to people, even though I needed to / wanted to. So once I found my language for doing it, it helped a lot.
I resonate with that. So, well, number one, I love Brene Brown. Is it Dare to Lead that you're referencing?
I'll send it to you. It's an exercise that someone gave to me that it's just like, it might be in Dare to Lead. But it was, it's my wife and I did the exercise together because we wanted to like, I was like, call me out. If you think this is not one of my top 2 values, like call me out. And she did. And we both got down to where, it turns out we had one value out of the 300 in common.
Wow.
So there's a lesson there. Sorry. I was going to say there's a lesson on calling, like in startups and business and like pretty much everything in life, like pruning or whatever the word for removing versus adding stuff. Like I'm probably like a lot of founders, like I want to keep adding things, put more stuff on my plate or the team's plate or the company's plate or whatever.
I completely
like really
agree.
important to not live that way completely. And some of the best things you can get is like, all right, we're cutting this. We're not doing that. This isn't a value. I mean, obviously it's a value. Being a good person is a value, but that wasn't your top 3. There was fairness about probably a lot of great things that you probably would have wanted to pick. And
that you say, how can I, and that you're like, how can I ever not, I have to have a 3, but that, like, nope, you can go to, like, you can only have 2 is for whatever reason, it just works so well. And I totally agree. Like it's a valuable forcing function for any tough decision or any deciding what work to take on or whatever it may be.
I don't think it's talked about enough, like running a company as a people pleaser. Do people even really talk about it? I actually was talking to someone about it this morning. Like it goes against every like natural reaction that you have to anything. And there's an employee now, she works for Price Labs and we're like very good friends still, who worked for me at 360. And I think about her all the time because she was like the first person that reported to me that we like struggled, and we like openly talk about it now as like lessons that we both learned. And I think that my biggest regret was not being direct with her, because I wanted her style of communication was very direct, and it almost freaked me out because I'm such a people pleaser. And now I think about this all the time. Like, what would it be like now if I just like was honest with you about things that you could have improved upon? And I never was, because I was just too afraid of hurting her feelings, or putting myself in an uncomfortable position, which is like, I think it's like a safety thing or something. I don't know.
I can really, and that's why the framework for me actually unlocked a lot of feedback. Is like, I'm only being honest, and I'm only truly being your friend if I critique. I'm only truly being a good manager if I can try to show you something that other people might see and not say.
Dare to Lead was like really helped me.
Just like you got to remember that you have other stakeholders. I mean, I'm always kind of amazed when you see these big companies and there's people just tailoring whatever decision is made this way, that way. There's no way to please everybody. And so you have to like assess your stakeholders and feel like, hey, what am I doing this for? If I'm not going to give feedback to a certain person, I can't. Yeah. I used to investment banking for 2 years out of college. And I worked with this guy, Israeli military dude, who's like good friend still to this day. And he was so intense. And he was my like immediate manager. And he was also the coolest guy you'd ever hang out with. And he would treat me like almost like a little brother. We'd go walking. He would always joke about like how he spends more time in the office than he spends with his family. I mean, investment banking, you're working like 100 hours a week, pretty consistently. But he was so good. The minute we're in the office, there's never a doubt, like we're talking about work, and he was never going to like shred. He's going to tell you what he thought always. And it made me kind of realize that that's not a bad thing. Like we're in a job, we're getting paid. And like, if I'm not working, it's going to be bad for everybody, the whole team. I can't do this well. And so that gave me a lot of like confidence and going like, that's actually not a bad thing. Like that's not bad. Yeah. Like, in fact, you better bring it. Now you can do that without like being mean or unkind to people. And there's a whole like way around it. And I certainly, similarly, you guys, like I wouldn't say I'm a people pleaser, but I want to be liked, and I don't like it's very uncomfortable, right? To have conflict. And so there are certain people that I feel like are very good at conflict. We all know these people, and like they just are okay with it. They're comfortable with it. That's not me necessarily. So you got to have to like balance that. But I think you get comfortable with it because you know, okay, there's a bigger reason. Like there's other people involved, not just the employee, not just this partner, or whatever. There's other people that are involved. And if you're doing a disservice to all those other people, if you're only going to think about, oh, I don't want to have an offered combo in my one-on-one with so-and-so, you know?
100%. I adopted the mantra "clear is kind," and
Yeah, that's a great
whenever I
one.
go into
Yeah.
a difficult conversation, I always think like, okay, clear is kind. It's unkind to be unclear, and it sounds silly, but it helped a lot. Maybe I'll get it tattooed.
It doesn't. It sounds
Catchy
spot
too.
on.
Yeah, it's really good.
Informed. Yeah.
Your first book, that could be maybe like one of the working titles you go to the publisher with. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
I should get a trademark on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have 3 rapid fire questions before we wrap up. Number one, this is a thought, not a question yet, is I've like learned so much from talking to both of you, so I'm so excited about this conversation. But okay, 3 things, rapid fire. Number one, John, how do you manage stress in your life right now? Like work stress. Like what is your like advice or one thing that you think that you could probably do better? Like what's your current status in terms of managing stress?
I work out most every day. I eat well, and I eat like pretty consistent stuff. So I'm not like, to the extent that I can, I'm pretty like strict with myself about like what I'm eating, consuming. I drink a lot of alcohol, try to limit coffee. So just kind of like not doing stupid stuff with food and stuff like that. And then the other thing is like, I don't know, you just live like, this is like, you kind of get comfortable in this life, and entrepreneurship's kind of just always stressful in some form. That word is so like overused, I think. Like stress is like, for one person, very different to like the Nate Seal guy who's like, yeah, I'm comfortable with like this level of stress. I don't know. So everyone's different, but just getting comfortable with it and like realizing like it's a very cliche, but it's like a marathon, not a sprint. Like, so these little chapters happen, and every couple months, every couple weeks, whatever, you'll have these little things that happen, and it's like, oh, this is a little stressful spell. And just realizing it's not as big of a deal as you think it is in the moment, whatever that is, and then kind of like realizing that you can live with a lot more than you realize as you grow. So, and also but you got to do the right things, and that means like being responsible with yourself, your health, all these things, and kind of know where your limits are on that stuff, because that stuff really, there's like, I'm making this up, 38 to 45% improvement in your life and your management if you're doing those things right. You know what I mean? And if you're not, like, tell me how you feel.
On the spot statistic.
Literally.
That's an amazing poll.
Self-selected
That's
poll.
an amazing poll.
So I don't know, but it seems like that probably is somewhat true, and I don't know.
Okay, I agree. Like conferences, it takes me a week to recover, and like not even really like it's just eating like different food and not sleeping at all because you have to be up at the crack of dawn and like you stay out
and like
late.
conga lines at Italian restaurants and people singing
Yeah,
aria.
you never know what's gonna
Miss the
happen.
schedule. Yeah.
Hopefully.
What about you, Andrew? How are you managing your stress these days?
So there's the day-to-day that like in a meeting, something stressful happens, something in Slack, email, whatever, just the boring, like no one needs advice on this. Like I take a breath and realize the road is long. However, when like the most stressful thing, my MO is just sleep on it and attack it first thing in the morning. Like almost always, it's not going to seem like a big problem tomorrow. If it's really urgent, you should just hit it right away and have a lot of energy for it. So with startup stress, I would say get sleep, reframe. You're going to solve half the problems in your sleep anyway, and then get up in the morning and start solving it. And that's that. Like no magic. It just works. It works for me. And I don't get super stressed anyway. So like it works for me.
It turns out that diet and exercise and sleeping like actually make a difference, which is frustrating.
The basics. Yeah. Go have fun for a little bit. Come back and like, as long as you're not angry or nervous, like you can make better decisions. And gain perspective, and usually you were caught up more in the emotion as opposed to the actual, more in the emotion than maybe the reality.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, think Dalton Caldwell from YC. I remember him mentioning this and saying something like, I think it was him. It was like, a lot of the things that at startups that seem stressful, you literally can just be like, I'm not addressing it. Let it sit.
Just not going to do it.
And
Let
like,
it
it's
burn.
weird. You can't do that with customers. There's certain things you can't do that with. Full stop. But like, there are a lot of things that come up in the course of just the day to day where it's like, oh man, that's going to be a big deal. I'm like, oh, lady, address it. Like, actually, a big chunk of those things you should not address. You wait, give them a minute. Again, we understand there's things we have to address that are like hair on fire stuff, but there are plenty of things that aren't, and you kind of don't realize that until you kind of start to see stuff that you didn't address that you thought you needed to, and then you're like, oh wait, that kind of resolved itself.
Okay, so my next question, this is going to be hard for you guys to boil this down. If you had like one piece of advice for an aspiring founder, what would it be? John, go first.
Aspiring. Oh, sorry.
Aspiring. Haven't done it yet, but they're thinking about it. So like, what are you saying to them? Whoever has it on top of mind, you know?
I need more time to think of the most brilliant,
Start would be my thing. Don't wait another minute. Get started, get out there, fail a bunch. So I think like the you're always gonna be scared. There's always a reason not to do it. So I think with aspiring, I think entrepreneurship sets you free. And I think it's the best journey you can possibly take. I think it's the most exciting, the most fun. Yes, incredibly stressful, but makes amazing stories. So just start and figure out the rest, and don't give yourself an excuse to wait until tomorrow.
That was so good. On the spot too. John.
Don't follow that advice. No.
I was literally going to say that. No. I think the thing is, if you're going to start a company, talk to your customers and talk to your customers more, and then talk to your customers more, and build products around that. And so, that's kind of standard advice you get, but it's so important and so true. So don't overthink that. And when you start to get away from that, it's when people start to get into trouble. People start to kind of, doesn't mean you have to build what the customers want, but you need to talk to them and understand their problems, or whoever you're building, whatever stakeholders you want to build for.
Better answer. Talk to customers.
Okay.
Yeah, understand the need.
Yeah.
Better answer.
Yeah. Okay. What is the most exciting thing in your life right now? Andrew, I mean, you're having a baby, so like that's really
daughter, November 26th. Yeah. Fingers crossed, you never know. That for sure. And then Wheelhouse just launched a new product today. No big deal. Super excited about that.
Yeah.
And
hello. Two bombs dropped on this call right now.
So yeah, it's things are fun. I don't know. Summer's here, right? Summer starts like this week, whatever, next week. So that.
Summer solstice this weekend, Sunday, right? June 23rd?
It's midsummer.
June 21st.
Horoscope. You got to read that horoscope.
John, what are you most excited about right now?
I think just generally, Topkey is the focus of my life right now in many respects. So I'm excited about a couple of really big products we're releasing in the next couple of days, actually. And then another that we'll be pushing out like later in the summer. And bringing on one and hopefully two new people. One who just accepted his offer. So very excited about that. So I think those would be kind of in order of the things that I'm most comfortable.
I can't wait to see the team grow.
Yeah.
I mean, you do hire some pretty. You too, Andrew. Both of you guys have pretty cool teams. I was talking to a friend actually who has a company in Jackson, a vacation rental company, and she said to me, I've been trying to pick a dynamic pricing software, and I just really love the Wheelhouse team. And so I think that we're going to go with Wheelhouse. And
That's great.
Isn't that cool? Yeah, and she like
Yeah.
specifically called out your team and how amazing they were, and I thought that was I should
It's
have
a nice
texted you and
crew.
told you that, but that was a couple weeks ago. So hopefully she signs, and
Megan's sitting on
And
I
that
did
news
reinforce.
to Andrew. That's
Meaghan, what are you most excited about? What's the most exciting to you, Meaghan?
Well, I'm getting married on November 8th, and I'm very excited about that in San Juan, Puerto Rico. November, big month for the Kitchell Moylan households. I don't know. I feel like life feels really I have felt very inspired lately, which I never consider myself much of like a creative person, and I don't know. I think I kind of went through this rut earlier in the year where I like didn't know what I wanted to do with my life or who I wanted to be really and what the next 5 years was going to look like, and it's recently I don't know. I feel like very at peace with what I want to do next. And that feels really good. And I feel like I feel a lot of creative juices flowing. And I'm getting married.
Nice.
You know, that is
Yeah.
a sandwich. So and maybe it's all tied together. Like I don't know. I feel like very like a grown up lately, which you would think turning 30 would do that, but I don't know. That just made me feel kind of old. I like moved something upstairs in my house last night and I like pulled a muscle in my back and that's felt weird. Like I'm about to be 31 in September. I'm not excited about that. That's one thing I'm not excited about.
Hey, you might have some older folks on the call here. 31 sounds pretty good. Pretty good.
Doesn't
You're
feel
coming
pretty
into
good
a
to
farm
roll
air.
back, you know? You're like a
Yeah.
cycler. And John's at the gym every day. I've been doing Pilates lately. I've been excited about that. Maybe that's it, right? Like I got this like I'm very dialed with my routine. And I took both of y'all's advice and it's helping.
That's good. Hey, I found a hack that I'm excited about.
Please
Rolling.
Hit it.
Have you guys rolled before? Like, you know, get one of those
Foam
like
rolling.
foam rolling.
Yeah, I'm like, are you talking about
no.
what I think you're talking about?
No, rolling, like foam rolling.
Wow.
Go to
Go
a
with it.
festival.
Have you guys been to Coachella? No, yeah.
Yeah.
Rolling, foam rolling, really good. Good for before bed. Has been the move.
Nice.
Okay. You've got a more dialed routine than anybody I've ever known. Like your routine.
Yeah, I
is
wish it
like,
was more dialed though. I don't think it's like super dialed. I think it's more
it's
like
like Patrick Bateman level. I feel like
yeah.
Wow.
minus like the murdering. I
Have you
feel like
seen
you
my
don't
business
like iron
cards
your
too? They're really. I get a
Yeah.
lot of compliments on the cards. So yeah.
Nice.
Well, I'm so glad that I got to talk to both of you today. Thank you so much. It is always fun hanging out and especially hanging out virtually where other people get to watch and listen. So thank you for being here. And
Thank you,
this
Meaghan.
episode is coming out really soon. So I'm excited to listen to it and I'm excited for everyone that's listening to listen to it and to watch it. So thank you for being here. And everyone, thanks for listening to Workflows and Espressos. And we'll see you next week.